Like we've got some members here in the waiting room. You tell me when to start, Vince, and
Let's go for it now.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Good morning on this December day. I'm Krista Boucher, your host for the member comment period this morning. Welcome to our board meeting. As a reminder, we record these meetings and post them to our website. Members are invited to ask questions or share comments during this first part of the meeting, and we'll have some time at the end for follow-up questions. A few reminders: please keep yourself muted. And if you want to make a comment or ask a question, please type it into the chat or raise your hand, and we'll put you into the queue. I have a couple of quick updates for the people in the room. Our board member elections open up on December 14th. This is something we do every year. This year we have 3 open positions for the San Juan district, the Shaw district, and the Lopez district. That includes some outer islands in there as well. And you can find out the details of how to run or how to encourage people to run on our Opalco website. We'll have all that on our homepage on the 14th. And then as a quick update, our Baylor Hill CUP hearing has been delayed, and we've been requested for Opalco to provide further information, and we don't currently have a date for this hearing. And then mark your calendars for our in-person title town hall meetings during the week of January 21st. You can check our calendar on our website to see when the team is coming to your island, as we engage you on this important local renewable energy project. So now that I've given you a few updates, does anyone have a comment that they want to make for the board before we dive into our agenda?
I think Michael Reardon was interested in speaking to the board.
And I see Rob Mema has his hand raised as well. So maybe Rob go first, and then I'll put Michael.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, Rob, do you want to unmute and make your comment? I don't know, maybe he can't unmute. I don't know. But I sent you the ask to unmute. Oh, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that. I was just asking if there's any updates on the Jackson Beach and the dog park pole moving project.
That Russell, I think you're
Yeah, I think Russell could give a better update than not.
Thanks, Rob. We are hoping to kick that off at the beginning of the year. So it's the last status that you probably know of is its current status, and we had some delays on material deliveries, so we will start that project right after the beginning of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, please.
Thank you for entertaining my comments. I'd hope to be brief. Hopefully, some of you at least have seen my recent Seattle Times opinion piece, which appeared in the Sunday edition on the front page, the AI power struggle. And it really brought home to me the challenges that Opalco is facing, and all utilities in the Pacific Northwest. But let me first thank Foster and especially Jay Kimball for giving me a very detailed education on these issues, and gave me far more material that I could cram into 1,000 words in the Seattle Times. My focus was on data centers, and the power demand coming from data centers, I conclude, is just absolutely jaw-dropping. The Northwest Power and Conservation Council report, which I think was like July or August of this year, said that up to 6 gigawatts of growth in the next 5 years. And I can't imagine where that's going to come from, given all the constraints on adding power to the system. So I will be following that in the coming years, and I'm not even sure whether that number includes the current generation of AI chips, like the Blackwell chip coming from NVIDIA, which, if you don't know, each one consumes over a kilowatt, plus plus probably another half a kilowatt for cooling. That's like an average home for just one. You can't really call it a chip; it's pretty large, but or one microprocessor. And I can imagine that there are going to be pressures to substitute these chips in for what's in the data centers right now in the in the Eastern Washington. Anyway, I will be following that, probably writing about it again. One other thing I'd like to comment about is that I saw a comment by John Gratian, and I commented on in the Orcasonian having to do with the power consumption during the January 2024 cold snap. And I was again saw some jaw-dropping numbers in terms of the consumption of individual residences. You know, mine went up to like 5 or 6 kilowatts on the January day, but I think she showed numbers that were approaching 100 kilowatts. Now, I don't know whether to believe those or not. I haven't looked to it any deeply, but it occurred to me, and I think she made that argument, that perhaps we should be charging the base rate, differently for different users. Now, I'm currently paying about $56 or $57 per month as my base rate. And I would think that a wonderful way to encourage conservation is to vary that number according to the previous year's usage. Like this is what East Sound Water does. My base rate depends on how much I used in the previous year, especially during the months of July through September. And that's a great incentive for conservation. So I don't know if that's under consideration, but it strikes me as a very reasonable way to pursue. And I see that on your agenda, you're talking about tariffs in 2025. So maybe that's under consideration. Okay, that's all I need to say.
Great,
If you have
Michael,
any
appreciate your
questions,
comments. Thank you.
Do you have any other board member or co-op members who want to make a comment at this time?
While we're waiting, I just wanted to thank Michael for really paying attention to some of the struggles that we're going to be facing in the future. And we really appreciate you being engaged. I know it's going to be a long discussion that we're going to have with our members, because reliable power and supplying that extra power for the load growth is going to be really expensive and hard to come by. So thanks for paying attention. Look forward to follow-up articles too.
Yeah, and Jay especially educated me on the difficulty of the permitting process in bringing on renewable power. By the way, Foster knows this. I am a early investor in a company called 247 Solar, headquartered back in the Virginia area, and which tries to provide levelized power, concentrating solar with storage. So I know a little bit about it from that perspective.
Thanks.
I think Gary
Yeah.
looks like he wants to comment. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Michael, that's good observations on your part. I agree with what you're saying. I'm actually here basically in support of Opalco moving ahead with alternative energy sources. And I'm particularly interested in the tidal aspects. I think this is a critical thing. This is something that we can really harness and seriously and in an eco-friendly manner. So I've been mapping the Salish Sea for about 25 years now. And so I have a good feeling for the seafloor and the habitats and what occurs there. And I think that there is really good potential for Opalco to be able to harness tidal energy, as well as other energy, such as solar and what have you. I know solar is a bit of a controversy right now, but it appears that solar can be put together in a fashion that is beneficial to the soils and to the ground around it, help out in agriculture. And I think those things is something that Opalco should pursue. And as a geologist and a geophysicist, I feel strongly that the islands and the region around here can help. As far as the AI positions that Michael has shown, it is disturbing how much energy these server farms suck up. But there's different types of tidal turbines. There's small ones that can actually offset some of this if we go to a digital twin, using digital twin to follow up with what's happening with tidal energy. I think one of the fallacy right now, and maybe this is because Opalco is having to spend a great deal of time trying to convince regulators and the permitting agencies that this is a doable and capable operation and title. But I think that one of the things is we need to assure the public and environmentalists and the tribes that basically title can be monitored very easily to assure the public that it can be done in a fashion that wouldn't be interfering with whale migrations and fish migrations and what have you. And I think I've been working with a AI company called Ready Minds and trying to develop a usable digital twin simulation that could show how you can understand and monitor and mitigate a tidal turbine operation. And so I'm very much interested in Opalco's moving ahead on this front, and I'm happy to assist in any way I can. Thank you very much for hearing from me.
Gary, thank you much. Really appreciate those comments.
I can give a quick little update on the title just because such a great topic of discussion. So if you remember, and I think most people on the video, but for those who may review the board meeting at a later date, we're in the middle of our title investigation, right? We got a grant from basically DOE and support from our Washington State folks and to study what's going to look at the attributes of the title. We're kind of in the middle right now, so we don't know exactly what all the financial ramifications are, whether or not we can achieve all the metrics to make it viable for our area. But that's what we're studying right now, and we're working really well with Department of Energy, with PNNL, some other think tanks that are assisting with the way, because it's really an innovative technology, and having the support of Department of Energy as we're exploring this has been pretty exciting for us. We'll see what the results are. We should have those back early next year, and we'll continue on with those discussions. So please stay engaged. I know that we're going to have to really have some good communications with the membership and the other stakeholders and the tribes and so forth. It's going to be a pretty big dialogue, and really important for everyone to chime in the importance of what we're trying to accomplish, because if we don't figure out our own load growth, then reliability becomes a real big issue for us, and being an essential utility out here in the middle of the San Juans is always a challenge. So thank you.
All right, do we have any other comments before we dive into our agenda from our membership today?
Okay, Chris, thank you much.
Yeah, let's get
So
going.
welcome everybody to our last board meeting of 2024. Been an interesting year. We have on our agenda this morning, we've got a number of items, but probably most important and one of the fun things of the year is we're having a youth rally presentation at 9 a.m. So I just wanted to do a few short items before we get to that. So let's start out this morning with the consent agenda items. You've all had a chance to read through that one, and I didn't see anything particularly controversial on that. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Mark?
Moving.
Tom or Brian got that? Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
And are there any objections or abstentions? I hear none on that, so those items are passed.
Hey Vince, if I could make a recommendation,
Sure,
why don't we
Buster.
kind of jump into that discussion that we previously had earlier this week with the Friends?
Certainly.
Can we accelerate that one? I think
Yeah, go ahead.
that
I'll
pretty quick.
give you a few minutes for that for sure.
Yeah, we had a meeting, and the agenda item says discussion with the Friends. I want to make sure it's clear. We don't have discussion with the Friends today. This is a follow-up discussion that Vince and I and the team and Krista had, really answering some good questions the Friends of San Juan have been raising. And I put a presentation that we reviewed with them on our website. So if anyone's curious about the slide deck that went along with it, it's there. I don't want to go through the details. It's pretty dense information, but great information for everyone to know that's available out there. The goal with the meeting was really to get on the same page with the Friends of San Juan. Part of the discussion that we had centered around the Baylor Hill project that we're trying to get off the ground over on the community solar project that we have on our San Juan Islands. There's been this misconception going on that that you can do one particular renewable generation resource and use that and then you're good. And that's rooftop solar. In reality, we need all types of generation locally and really try to optimize it while we're keeping protection over our wonderful environment that we need to make sure that we protect and never jeopardize that. So having a discussion with the friends to say, we need more than just rooftop solar. And I know there's been a handful of people that think in the same light, that they think if we put rooftop solar on all the roofs in San Juan County and some of the impervious surface areas that we've got it covered, in reality, it's really doesn't move the needle as much as you would think. And we wanted to put a presentation around that. So know that that's the intent of the presentation that went forward. I think we ended in a good spot of, their job is to make sure that they do protection and really not go forward with projects unless there's sureties. Our mission is to provide reliable power, and be an essential facility that I just touched on is really important for us to figure out, navigate through these waters. There's another topic of discussion that was alluded to in the board materials about a docket request. And one of the outcomes with the friends was to work together on a docket request that we submitted to the county. The docket really means that the land use tables within the county for permitting perspective are very narrow. They think of basically electric generation to be the old fashioned way. You look at the big generators that we have on Mount Baker Road, diesel generators, really archaic, and they don't really consider passive generation like solar, like we're doing over at the Baylor Hill Community Solar Project. So we want to work together with the whole community and update those tables with the county. And that was a topic of discussion that occurred, what was it, Tuesday, Vince?
Tuesday, at the county council meeting, correct.
Yeah, so what we did is with our meeting with the friends, we agreed to work together with them and really try to fine tune those land use tables. I don't know if we're ever going to really agree based on our different mission statements, but it's nice to have these dialogues so we can agree on the importance of providing reliable power within the San Juan Islands, which is going to be really a challenge, as evidenced by the Baylor Hill project. It gets really hard when you're trying to meet opposing constraints of a host of stakeholders. So stay tuned on that. Anything you want to add? I know Wendy was part of the discussion and really brought home some good attributes about what happens when you delay a project like Baylor Hill. And I think the friends and the discussion group was really benefited from that. Wendy, I don't know if you want to touch on your side from the discussion that we have with the friends.
So, I've been involved in the Friends through other work. And so I had heard about where some of their concerns about Baylor Hill were coming from, primarily that they thought that power could be generated completely using rooftops. And then also their concern about taking agricultural land and using it for anything other than agriculture. So what I really wanted to do was talk about OCPA agriculture and Fur Peace Farm and how, agriculture here in the San Juans can benefit from agri-solar, as well as I put together just a slide showing the number of pounds of carbon dioxide per year that we would emit for every year that we don't install Baylor Hill. That's in the slide deck. And that's based on numbers from the EPA greenhouse gas calculators for our zip codes. And basically it comes out to the offset is, and I tried to just put it in numbers everyone could understand, over 300,000 gallons of gasoline burned every year, or approximately 1,000 vehicles, driving in the San Juans of residents. So, and the offset would be planting 33,000 seedlings every year that we delay the project. So I thought that was kind of an effective way of waking them up to not just the need for solar, but delaying while we keep looking for the perfect site.
It's really neat to really have a conversation with Wendy about the group that farms. I think, would you say there were 16 families that get together that farm one particular area? I found that really a great model.
Yeah, in total, there's 70 families split over 4 different farms. So it's a good model of, while farming's not economic for the conventional old family farm necessarily in the islands, there are other ways of doing farming to raise food for islanders.
And what we see is we could add a lot to that dialogue. There's in the instance of Wendy, she's got a nice solar array, electric tractor. And if you think about having additional solar within a farm, you can raise additional dollars that you probably require in order to just break even financially, so you don't dig yourself a big giant hole. So it's really a great way to kind of consider how the community needs to work together to be a sustainable community and embrace all these critical components as one, as opposed to just saying no to everything, which is a big giant danger. We'll never accomplish anything if that's the case. And Vince, you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment. So we had I don't know whether you call it a minor or major victory on Tuesday, but going back several months, I had accidentally stumbled onto watching the Planning Commission meeting where they were presenting the docket requests to the Planning Commission and giving the recommendations on stuff. And we had put in 2 docket requests related to the land use for renewable energy, and the Friends had put in 2. So there were 8 that were going to be added to the work group. And between DCD and the Planning Commission, there was a disagreement about whether they should even be considered. And primarily it was coming up as the DCD was saying that their workload was too much at this point in time. They've got docket requests that have literally numbers of them. The 11 that existed already had been in, some have been in for like 9 years and had no motion going forward on it. So at the last month's county council meeting, Colin gave a presentation, and there were some questions about whether they could deny docket requests or put them off for a year or something of that. So that raised the flag immediately. So we got to work on that, and we did some lobbying. We put a presentation together. So I made some testimony during the docket request discussion period on Tuesday. And the Friends followed up, and we were basically very much in agreement. We didn't get into the details about where we disagreed on the specifics of the thing, but I think we both pointed out collectively that, boys and girls, this is really important stuff. It needs to be in a very high priority on DCDs, and you can't abandon it at this point. So fortunately, they took the vote on it and decided to include those items in the thing. And I believe after the first of the year, county council is going to get together and have some discussions about what the priorities of the now 17 items that they've got in their work request. And hopefully this land use thing will get elevated to something important. Now, they don't have the capacity to really dig into this. They're going to do it. So we and Friends and other community groups are going to have to come together. And I explained during the testimony that this has got to be modeled after what Washington State University did out in the Columbia Plateau. And the concept is we need to do a least harm or least critical determination, which is go through the entire land use, and you've got to exclude all the areas where you absolutely don't want to have it, and then figure out what's left over. And this is work that's been going on. I gave Foster a copy. Klickitat County was being not diluted, but deluged with requests for large scale solar and wind farms out there. So, and their county codes were ambiguous about so they actually went through took them about 3 years to do it, but they came up with what they call an energy overlay zone, which actually then short circuits the whole permitting process, because it says basically within this zone, outside of a relatively short thing, these types of systems are going to be available for put into use. So we're going to have to get something similar to that for San Juan County, because as Foster pointed out, the current land use codes are unbelievably restrictive. Fundamentally, there's almost nowhere we can put this stuff currently, and we got to have to move forward on that. So I give the council credit for seeing that, and hopefully starting next year we can work together on it.
Yeah, the codes are really interesting when you look at them. If you actually look at where we want to put a community solar project, the major land use is probably ag. And then the catch-22 is you got the Friends wanting to protect ag. And so we don't have a choice. We're kind of in the middle between that. So thanks, Vince, for joining the council meeting and speaking on behalf of PALCO. Appreciate it.
We're good. Okay. Let's see. Do we have any other short moment? We got 5 minutes here.
Just one. I have observation about this. If the county is looking for us to go to green energy, and we don't have ag solar generation here. Basically, what they're saying is, well, this needs to be done in another county. They're basically saying, leave it from San Juan County, and one of the other 38 counties in Washington will have to be the location for our stuff. That doesn't seem right.
No, it really
Yeah.
doesn't. There's a there's a presentation slide that really highlights that, Brian. There's, it shows you all the land uses and what you have to do. The majority of them are no. The rural farm forest, which is the largest by far in the county, is an outright no. And then everyone else is an arduous CUP process that we're going through and have been for years. We started this thing in 2021. So kind of look out. If we don't solve this thing locally, I think reliability is going to be more difficult than you can imagine for us.
One of the things pointed out was that if you look at the projected load growth, and if you go out, the comprehensive plan is for a 20-year period, but if you just look out even 10 years, if you look at population growth, we got, in theory, 2,000 more people in their time period, which is 1,000 houses, and that's, another 12,000 megawatt hours. The ferries, if they ever do get connected up, we did the calculation, it's like 72,000 megawatt hours. Desalination would be a few thousand megawatt hours. Electric vehicles is a few thousands of megawatt hours. You add it all up, we're looking at another 100,000 megawatt hours compared to what we're doing right now. And we either got to get another cable to the mainland, or we got to do local generation. So it's or a combination of the both. But to say, and we already got turned down for our first pass at trying to get the cable. So what's that leave? Local generation. So it's not an option. We're going to have to do something.
Any other discussion? We could probably cross off that Home Street Bank
Okay, what is that? What is that?
topic really quick. Right now, I guess we'll celebrate Nancy for all of her hard work at Orcas Power and Light. She's retiring.
Oh,
And so anyway, Nancy, we really appreciate all your hard work over these years. You've been a pleasure to work with. Your ability to raise the bar for Opalco and the auditing and the book of business has been incredible. So really appreciate all your hard work. That's a great lead in. Now we need to figure out the transition. The transition is going to require us to put new signatures on the Home Street Bank, the lending institutions. Nancy, thanks for chiming in there. Travis is going to be taking over the finance department. We're excited about that too, but really want to celebrate Nancy right now, and then we'll celebrate Travis at come January. How's that?
yeah, that's great.
Let's see. With that, so we're changing the signatures from Nancy and putting them in. I think the one Home Street Bank is really just to go through that formal process of adjusting them.
Okay, so therefore we'd be looking for a motion to approve the addition of Travis Neal, head accountant, and Michelle Beal, accountants, as signers to the Home Street Bank account. Do I hear such?
So moved, Vince.
Mark? Second?
Second.
Brian, Jerry got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Vince.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask a question? When did we place our business with Home Street Bank? It's not a name I've heard in the past.
Oh, what it is it's part of our NRECA group with our retirement 401k processing stuff.
So how long have we been using them in this capacity?
Probably a year or so. I think they're part of the 401k, retirement world that we've been using for about that long. And so kind of a partnership relationship with NRECA.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, minimal dollars, there's, less than 100,000 in the works, but we still got to change everybody's names for signatories.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? No, hear none on that. So that motion is approved. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time,
Chris, I'll
Krista.
hand it back to you.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Okay, I see. So we had a great youth rally this last summer, and we had 4 students from Orcas Island who I see there. They'll go around and introduce themselves, and one from San Juan, Matthew. So why don't you all go ahead and introduce yourselves and what grade you're in and what high school, and then I'll bring the presentation up and then you can tell me when to move the slides.
Okay. I'm Riley. I'm a junior in high school.
I'm Sienna Richardson. I'm also a junior in high school.
I'm Isabel. I'm also a junior in high school.
I'm Sophia, and I'm also a junior.
And we all go to the Orcas Island High School.
And then I'm Matthew. I'm also a junior in high school, but I go to Friday Harbor High School.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, they did a great presentation for you all, so I am gonna bring that up and then let's see.
So while you do that, fantastic. This is a part of our, Nordine Jensen Youth Scholarship Program. It's my favorite meeting that we have every year. And it's always exciting to get our community members and the high schools involved in what we do. So it's really fun for us. Thanks for coming, you guys. We really look forward to seeing your presentation.
Yeah, and I tell you, working with young people always gives me hope. So we've got a bright future. So take it away, Sienna.
Okay, so this is our Opalco, Idaho Youth Rally presentation. You can go to the next slide.
Okay, so this was our travel day. Going on the ferry is a very normal thing for us Islanders. And after we got on the ferry, we met up at Anacortes, and that's where we met Matthew. And we drove down to Seattle. And on the ride there were a lot of mosquitoes in our van, but it made it so much funner. We woke up really early the next morning for our flight, and getting through security and bag check was really easy. We just stuck together. And when we landed, we got into another van and had a fun ride to the campus from there. It was a lot hotter than we all thought it would be, but it was very fun. I liked it personally. And on our way back, it was hard to say goodbye to all of our friends that we made, but we needed to get home. It was the same routine. We all stuck together through security and on the airplane, and we had the time of our lives there. We never wanted to leave. And you can go to the next slide. This is just life. You can just look at the pictures.
And that quote in the middle, what's that from?
That was from one of the guest speakers that we had. Which was it? Was it Ben Kajar? I think that was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, they did some good life skill, mental health stuff this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can go to the next slide and then talk about the Capitol.
Yeah, this is us visiting the Capitol. Everybody at the rally got these matching yellow shirts, and and we just toured the Capitol and saw all of the, I think, granite or marble. The whole thing was marble. It was really cool to see. It was very big and open. We learned about the Senate and the House of Representatives, and we're in a elevator right there. Next slide. That's just more of the Capitol and us taking pictures.
Okay, you can go to the next slide.
So this was our formal banquet that we had at the end of the week. It was a lot of fun. We got ready all together, me and my roommates, and then some of our friends, which was super fun. And it was like a good bonding experience. And we took really cute pictures, which was a lot of fun too. And also the food was so yummy, and the dessert, it was amazing. And it was a really fun way to end the night and all come together and just enjoy a really yummy meal. All cute and dressed up. Yeah, next slide. And then here's some of what we learned. We learned a lot going into it. I thought we were just going to learn about energy, and we did. We learned a lot. We learned how you acquire energy, how co-ops work in general, how co-ops get their energy for the members. And we also learned about the job opportunities that you can get in that industry. But what I didn't think I was going to learn is we learned a lot of life skills that I am going to use probably for the rest of my life. We learned a lot about how to do an important interview for the scholarships that they had there, the other ones. It was a little scary, but I did it, and now I feel a lot better about doing them for the future. We communicated with a lot of new people from many different places, which was super cool to learn how to do that. And then we also learned how to write a resume, which was super handy, and just like leadership skills in general. So yeah. Next slide.
Okay, so while we were there, we had a lot of different activities. Some of them were kind of just more like fun team building stuff, and some of them were more of the life skill stuff, and some of them were related to like energy. So we did like a lot of just like the team building ones. I think up on the top left here, it was like we were all like blindfolded, and we had to pour water from a crate like into another bucket, but we were like blindfolded and holding ropes. And then over here, we had this exercise. It was about like the importance of not texting and driving. So they set up this course for us with like cones. And they had these like tricycles basically. And we were trying to navigate the course while like trying to send a text and, trying to avoid running over the cones. And that was pretty difficult. We had some like other, fun stuff, just like trying to, obstacle course kind of stuff, trying to get through, without touching the strings. And then up here, like in the center, that was a really cool demonstration. We had a couple of linemen come in, and they had this little like miniature setup on a trailer, and they showed us all about like their safety procedures and what happens if you don't follow them. So they had like a hot dog and a cantaloupe, and we got to see those get electrocuted with a lot of volts. So that was pretty cool and pretty important. They showed us like, their fire resistant clothing and all their tools and their, how their repair lines. So that was really cool to see. Next slide. And then we had a talent show. So I think this was on either the last night or the second to last night. And we had like some individual talents, and then also we had to do a group skit too. So we had like Malina did some guitar and like sung for us, and then Sienna did some dancing. And then our group skit, we did like kind of a spinoff on like Outer Banks. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's basically like, a show about, kids who are growing up on like an island kind of like ours, and, doing treasure hunting. So we kind of just, play the characters from that, but with a twist, and being on like our island and talking about like the fairies and stuff. And like, so that was really fun to do too.
Yeah, next slide. Okay, so I'm a dancer, so this is one of my favorite parts. We got to do a bunch of line dancing, and for me, it was really cool to see all the different, like every co-op had a different like dance that they brought and they taught to everybody, and it was really fun. And I was picking it all up, and I convinced like Sophia to join me and Isabel, and it was just, I had a blast. And then I started a flash mob with a dance that I knew, because I was like, everybody else is showing off their dances. And so I had everyone follow along in a dance I did, and it was really, really fun. Next slide. And then we also had a dance with a DJ after our formal banquet, which was pretty cool because there was also a lot of line dancing, but it was also like kind of paralleled with what our high school dances are kind of like, which is fun. Next slide. So then we had many guest speakers, and also a bunch of classes. And I think Matthew touched on the demonstration speech, so I won't talk about that a lot, but it was really fun to hear a bunch of different people's experiences and things. Next slide. So my favorite guest speaker was an inspirational speaker named Ben Kajar. He was a former wrestler who was born with Cruzon syndrome, which means he was told from a young age that he wasn't allowed to play contact sports, and he got bullied quite a bit. But his father like convinced him that he should wrestle if he wanted to wrestle. So he wrestled and kind of ignored what he was told. And he became a Division I All-American wrestler and ended up winning gold in the 2023 Greco-Roman competition, which is pretty cool. And his whole philosophy was like victor over victim. And it was like all about the mentality you chose and like how you looked at your life. And so he stood up on a desk and he like was like having us all chant and like was yelling, but in an inspirational way. And I think it was really fun for all of us. So yeah.
Nice.
So, so we had the awards summer ceremony, which granted various scholarships to those who showed exemplary effort to connect and display leadership throughout the week, or just had a particularly good interview. I personally received a $100 gift card, probably from my interview, and Sienna received a $500 scholarship. I think that Melina received something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also had the director voting, which was done by popular vote, which Sienna won after doing a good speech in front of everybody who went to the rally, which was very cool. Next slide, please. And we just really want to thank Opalco and the board and everyone for giving us an opportunity such as this. I know I personally really enjoyed the chance to see an environment that was not my own, but also to meet other kids who came from pretty much the same rural situation that we are in. And I really think that this should be an experience that is shared down the line. And I'm really excited for the kids this year who get to go with Sienna.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and it's a really cool program. I can't emphasize enough. And every year they vote one kid, which next year it's going to be Sienna, like they referred to, and those returning directors basically run the camp for the next year's students. So it's leadership skills the first year you go, and then run by youth, so that youth-led programs are the most powerful. So it's a very, very cool program, and I think I love going every year, and it's a pleasure to work with students.
And if you don't know Nordine Jensen, the program was named after him and his family. Have been really supportive of kids in our community, and I know he'd be really proud of you guys. So I hope you come back and work for Opalco one day.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us this morning too. It's always fun to see, and it looks like you had a good time, learned some great things. And so we're so happy to be able to support this activity. So go forth and have success.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Foster, I suggest we do the EGC membership item next, and then we'll take a break after that.
The EGC, there's one additional person that you guys need to talk about in executive session first. And then we could come back out of executive session and then make a motion for the whether or not you want to include that person on the EGC, as well as reconfirm the existing EGC members.
I think though, we've got Ray Glaze, I believe, is here too. May want to make some comments. There were some suggestions made, and Jerry brought to my attention. So if Ray is there, if you'd like to say a few things.
Yeah, hi Vince.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just sort of was doing my year-end cleanup stuff, and I ran across this issue and realized that we were probably out of compliance by a bunch of years. So thanks for taking this on. The other issue that I found when I was reading the bylaws is that the EGC membership is tied to the county council home, where your home is, rather than to the board's geographic, home requirements. And it seems odd to me because one of our primary jobs is to go out and get candidates. Not that we can't reach across the line, but we live in these communities, and it seems that it would be cleaner to have the requirement for the EGC match the board's geographic requirements rather than the county councils.
I know there's some Ray, I know there's some history that went through that. We went through it was a member committee on elections. God, what year was that, Vince? Do you recall?
2014, 2015?
Yeah, something like 15, something like that. Anyway, they came up with a series of alternatives, of suggestions just for governance and Opalco. It was a really fresh look at everything that we do. And they went through everything about districts, the number of board members. It really was a comprehensive review by this committee, and they did a great job. And one of their recommendations was, the EGC formation itself, but also how for in their perspective, it was easier to follow the districts of the county council and try to sync that up. And I know one of the recommendations was to adjust how our districting worked at Opauka, kind of the inverse of what you're suggesting. So anyway, that's the background on, that we went forward with kind of the thoughts that the EGC or the members election committee had, and then trying to get everything in sync with the county districting. But that's what the difference is between the two.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's not working. It was an oddity to me.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know if that's something that the board wants to consider. We could absolutely put that on a future discussion item and make adjustments to the bylaws accordingly if the board wants to go down that road.
Foster, can I make a comment? I seem to recall that we got some distance through, sort of a discussion of realigning districts, but there was considerable, it was a difficult issue to justify to the membership. And so we essentially kind of dropped that aspect of things at the time. And that's why the two things are not aligned. Am I recalling that correctly?
Absolutely. It gets into a lot of detail if you want to go through it, Ray. We can always have that conversation later. But it got into population differences amongst the different islands, right, and how you get equitable representation depending on what your island is. And I'd be happy to review that. But you're right, Mark. It wasn't as cut and dry as just changing a district.
And right.
This is Joel. As I recall at the time, the discussion also was that while the county is, a public entity and obligated to have generally equitable voting districts, the co-op isn't quite as obligated to do that. It's got to be done in a fair way that the board believes is representative of the membership, but it's not tied to the same requirements legally. So
yeah, my memory is that was the time when we experimented with the larger council and the balkanization of the council to be representative only of a certain portion of the county, and we've since dropped that politically, so that everybody votes for everybody. And it's the same for the co-op. I vote for candidates in other districts as well as for Jerry, of course.
Is there anything, Ray, that you mentioned something that you didn't know if it was necessarily broken? Do you have any wisdom there, any thoughts? Because you've been a really great EGC member, and I'd love to hear your perspective. I'm sure the board would too.
Yeah, there's a couple of times it's come up. Rob and I sort of share a district, and it's just kind of confusing a couple of times. But I like I say, it's not badly broken, and I don't think it's worth a lot of effort to clean it up.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I thought it was quite a conversation, and I think we did a thorough job. Interesting thing is, if I remember correctly, if you look at all the co-ops in the country, about half of them in the U.S. Only have vote for people in their group, and like us, the other half, everyone gets to vote. So I think what we do is fine. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to spend any time going through that again.
Yeah, thanks, Brent.
Okay. All right.
With that, to continue on with the discussion, I think we need to break into executive session, discuss the potential candidate that you've seen the credentials in executive session materials, and then we can come back in and either affirm or not, and then continue on with reconfirming the existing EGC members to make sure we're in compliance, as Ray brought up.
Foster, I'd recommend we do that like maybe the last item. Going out of executive session back into again, it's kind of hard on members who might be participating. So I'd rather just get through all of our regular items first and then do that as the last.
Let's do that. I like that. That's a good idea.
Good. Ray, thank you. Appreciate your comments on that. All right. That leaves us, I think we start on our 2025 tariff second read.
Yeah. So at the conclusion of our budget meeting, which always occurs in every November, we're left with our tariffs, and our budget determines, what we're going to be needing to collect in order to satisfy the parameters on how we serve our membership. We did a really thorough, detailed job. Thanks for all your work on that. Now the question is, how do we collect it? So we go through every year, we go through a tariff process, and it takes 2 reads. So we had the first one last month. So this is the second and final read, and we're gonna be invoking the new tariffs on January 1st. Pretty standard. We've been doing it this way for years. Board, when we went through the first read of the tariffs, came up with some really good dialogues, good discussions for information that we as a group wanted to, or the board wanted to review prior to solidifying the tariffs for January. And here's what it is. We had a good meeting, good discussion. There was some good information about, you know, how members receive the addition, you know, the additional rate increase, if you will, and which members do and what their profiles are and so forth. It's always important for us to follow cost of service metrics and apply those. What that really means is that everyone pays their fair share to support the co-op, and because there's no profit motive, but we want to make sure that there's equal distribution, if you will, for our membership profiles, and that's part of the rate setting methodology that we're going to be using in our 2025 rate study that's going to go on throughout, you know, through November this time next year. The additional information that was requested by the board had to do with service size. So these are how big your services are to run your individual households or businesses. The second informational item that the board requested a little bit of background on is whether or not we wanted to consider demand as a cost component that we could collect additional revenue through. Those revenue collection methodology are becoming more and more standard in the industry. I hear down at our PNGC meeting, which is our power resource group that we're part of, 25 co-ops that are part of that. A good percentage are starting to implement demand components to it. So that was a good topic of discussion. We'll go into that a little bit more detail, but it's going to be a difficult one for us to navigate through that right now. Allocate rate increases differently between the facility charge and the variable component or the kilowatt hour charge. What we've been doing for the last few years is equally distributing the rate increase to the facility charge and the variable component. And there's been discussion about increasing the facility charge up more in line with our fixed costs, but not nearly enough to collect it, and a little bit less on the kilowatt hour charge, the variable component. Now, based on that, so here the information we'll go through real quick if we can to catch the board up what we found out. So the next slide. So the tariff options we went through, you'll remember this. We went through various tariff alternatives. The one that we recommended as staff was to increase the 6% rate increase to affect all the tariff individual components on a 6% basis. I think we're excluding the solar rate. That was the only one that was excluded from it, but all the rest of the tariff metrics to be at 6%. Another option was discussed, and board wanted to see different information on, or some backup information on, is the fixed versus the variable, splitting up those rate collections amongst those two items. When you do that, it gets interesting. There's instead of a 6% rate increase, which is an average, if you collect more from the fixed component would actually go up well higher than 6%. And if you wanted to split it in this fashion, what you'd be looking at is your variable charges would actually be a lot less than 6%. If you average those together, that's what the 6% references. The reason that's a challenge because we got to communicate to our membership. And if you look at Krista and Joe, making those communications get pretty darn confusing when you bring it up to the membership when they say, when we tell them it's a 6% rate increase, and lo and behold, just the fixed component alone is a lot higher than that. For point of references, if you wanted to, we had alternative tariff options. If you wanted to put all the rate increase associated with the variable component, you'd be actually looking at an 8.56 to all those variable metrics. If you wanted to increase the fixed charge only, you'd be looking at a 19% to all the fixed charges. So dramatically different than the amount of revenue we need to collect to meet our budget parameters. Well, you determined that after review with our meter manufacturer as well as NISC, there's a little bit of hiccup in the way that we need to adjust our collecting of data. So it's not possible right now until we work out some background information and collection methodology for our tech side we'll be able to do it in short order, but certainly not between now and January. Probably it's going to take us through mid-year to work out some of the kinks that are going to go on. So we're going to be recommending that we take that one off the table, 5 and 6. Anything with residential demand is just not possible at this time, but we can entertain that during the rate analysis that we're going to do in 2025. And there was a new one where we added is increasing the service charge. So if you have a very large home, and we broke it out into a typical home is a 200 amp service. That's what you see as your meter base, if you will, out on the edge of your driveway in most instances, and you'll see a 200 amp panel and then a repeat panel inside your home for 200 amp. Some of the larger homes actually have dramatically larger meters, double in size, and some are even, they go to 600, they go to 400, they go 600 plus. And so we're looking at having a service charge difference well above the standard 200 amp panel, which would add another $14.40 to a service amp panel of the 400, or double that for if you had something that was above the 400 amp service, which is doubling, believe it or not, the capacity that the 200 amp service had. And then we looked at if you wanted to do a variable fixed and a service charge, you would see what those percentages would look like if we wanted to combine the service charge with the number 2 above. And then you look at the rate increases associated with those. Let's keep going to the next slide. So that kind of summarizes everything. Wanted to make sure, this was really important for us. So what staff did is we got together and collecting all the information that was requested by the board. And the first big deep breath that we had is communicating with our membership. This is a really short trigger between now and January 1st to make some pretty dramatic changes, or at least could result in some rate shock to a handful of members. And we don't like to catch people off guard. We want to make sure that we bring our membership along. We're extremely transparent and want to make sure that everyone understands why we do what we do and how we do it, so we don't lose that transparency component that we really strive to keep. So you can see some of the communication challenges that our team kind of brought up. I won't go through them individually, but just know that it's harder than not to really raise up some of those components at the short trigger. Our conclusion is, what we're going to recommend to the board is, let's take 2025, go through our cost of service rate study, do a very in-depth process, and then bring our membership along in communications so they really understand it. Our goals are going to be getting some rate calculators on our website and some other forms that we can really explain to the members why we're doing what we're doing and how important it is. Let's go to the next slide. I think we just put some basic distribution stuff in here just to kind of prepare us for our cost of service study that we're proposing in 2025. I think we've all seen this. Right now, if you looked at the way the revenue is collected, the majority of our revenue is collected in the variable component, and that's the orange area. And then the blue area is the fixed part. So that's how we collect our revenue. In reality, that's not the way we function. That's not the way our operations work. The majority of our costs are in the blue area because it's really, it's really costly to run a 20 island service territory with 25 submarine cables connecting us all together, and the complexity of having 3 crew facilities and running a 20 island grid versus the variable, which is really the power cost. So the majority of our costs are kind of inverse of what our current rate structure is. And that's what we need to fix with our rate structure going forward. So if there's a understanding of why we were entertaining putting more of the rate and rate collection on the fixed charge, it's because of this slide. And you get it really quick when you look at the blue. If we went down that 75-25 split, which we could do if the board wants to go down that road, and then we can so it's certainly justified in the numbers that we collect versus what we use. Here's some background information on residential that was requested amongst the board. There's some great frequency information and demand. So the frequency, this is off the top, is the number of services that use X amount of kWh. And as you could imagine, the majority of people are in this window of what they typically use in a given month or so what you can see is in a given month, you can kind of see how much majority of our membership work. Once you get up above, 1,000 is really what we say is kind of an average, if you will, of kilowatt hour usage in a given month. In January, it's a lot higher, and in the summertime, it's going to be a lot lower. But average, we're looking at about 1,000. So take that into consideration when you look at something like this. It's on a monthly basis. Then you can see the distribution. The higher users that are above and beyond that get fewer and fewer as you go, but they are really impactful on our grid. And you can also see the difference between the summer and the winter. Not as much of a fluctuation as you can see. So when you look at it at the table, it's really interesting. Normally when you look at something that's 1,000 kilowatt hours on average, you would think there'd be a big bell curve difference between January versus, say, June, July, and August. I mean, they're pretty noteworthy. I mean, you can look at 1,000 kilowatt hours and you kind of see that distribution that drops a little bit. But look at the 15 to 2,000. I mean, you look at some of those heavy users, and it's really associated with the heat you're trying to heat your home, and you're trying to make sure you survive the winter. And in the summertime, that heat's already provided, so it gets a lot less than that. So it's an interesting distribution chart. Next one we have is demand. So demand is what's your frequency of hitting your usage profile, and you can kind of see the different spikes that we have. The lower summer demands versus the winter demands. So the winter is dramatic because there's a lot of spike when you heat your home. That's kind of the most difficult thing, your home and your water. And then you can see that your speed kind of going more over to the right, certainly as your usage profiles change.
Foster, give me that. So, because this always comes up, you go way out to the right side there, and you got 34.5 to 35 kilowatt peaks. Small number of them, though. But any idea what's going on there, or what? Any detail on that stuff? No names or anything, of course. But
I don't know if you want to, Russell. Do you have any ideas on some of the heavy usage that goes on for the residential side? Well, I know we want to pull all this information out during our 2025 study. I don't know if when you were collecting the data, Russell, whether you have any thoughts.
So these are residential users. This could be groups that have multiple
buildings,
an ADU, a shop, other things like that. They could have cottage industries. They could have various different things like that. But now, mind you, this is just our residential group, not the residential TOU, not the residential renewable, just the residential group. That's part of the data set that we're trying to resolve, that kind of gives us a lack of clarity in for implementation of a demand rate in January. So these are illustrative and more accurate in the lower end. In that higher end, we've got some data cleanup to do. So
yeah, understood. Okay,
but it is those the larger services. Now, mind you, if you have a 200 amp service and you actually push the limits of that that service, you could be 50 kW in demand because of load diversity and actual usage in the home and NEC code for panel sizing. It's you should never be able to overload your panel, which means most of us are at 5 to 10 kW when it comes to our residences. Yet on your average 200 amp service, you could be north of that dramatically, 10-fold.
Yeah, and Ray brought up a good question that we could easily answer. Does this have to do with some EV load? And absolutely. So if you put one EV charger and you charge 2 cars at the same time, your demand would spike up during that time. And I think that's what we want to take our time as staff and the board is to review our cost of service study in 2025, so we can pull out those dynamics. And we want to encourage people to use electricity. It's the most efficient use of energy you can get. We don't want to penalize an all-electric home, including EVs, but we got to figure out what those triggers are and make sure that we can adjust accordingly so you don't penalize them. But some of the energy hogs and some other attributes of the way our grid's working, we need to make sure we collect from those folks as well. Seasonal is a good one to point to. they may not be here in the wintertime, but they're still having access to a grid that we all have to maintain. So, what's the right fair metric to charge, the seasonals goes through our head. And that's one of the things that we want to focus on. Thanks for reasoning.
My charger is about 7 kilowatts, which is why certainly in the winter, I only charge at night.
Right.
Let's also remind ourselves exactly what demand is and the difference between that and an instantaneous peak. And you can have a 200 amp service and hit 25 kW pretty quick for a couple minutes up to 5 minutes when you're doing kind of load stacking it. Your maybe your clothing dryer that's electric, your hot water heater, a heat system, maybe an EV charger. So you stack all those loads for a couple of minutes. Rarely do those devices last the full hour, and that's what we're talking here is an hourly demand. So hourly demand is just usage, kWh, over 1 hour. That's why it becomes kW in a demand bucket, if you will. So most homes, I mean, Jay and I were discussing his specifics. If I'm sure Jay won't mind me sharing some of that, but even though he hit a decent amount because of some of the load stacking for a 5 minute over an hourly term, he was back within the normal range of an electric home. I'm not going to say exact terms, but for instance, on my home, which I'll say is that, I'll hit in the 15 to 20 kW, which is great. I have a 25 kW transformer. But my average is in the winter is that I'm in that 7 kW group because my home is all electric now with my switch it up heat pump. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Let's go to the next one. These are just the tables that go along with those distribution charts. I like looking at the tables because it really gives you a good understanding of what's happening with each month and in demand levels. Service size, we want to make sure that we're attentive and we understand what we're doing the service time. I don't think anyone, I think that it's appropriate for those residents with bigger services within our community to pay more for those facilities. That makes all the sense in the world. It's like the proverbial, building a church for Easter Sunday kind of thing. They can always come and draw from the grid. So we have to, in theory, make sure we size our grid accordingly. And that may be oversized of a lot of people with the larger homes or putting their infrastructure on our grid. In terms of the numbers, you kind of see what's in store. That we got just under 500 of our members are in the 400 amp range, and then another 500, a little less than that, for over 400 amp services. So pretty small numbers, but it's still appropriate because when you go through cost of service metrics, you want to make sure that no one is being subsidized by other ratepayers, and that's really what we're trying to get to here. You kind of see the distribution there. Let's go. We went through some pros and cons for kind of the different service size that we had, and I won't belabor it, but there are some, and I think we need to do our homework a little bit more. There may be some unintended consequences. I was talking to one particular member, kind of an older guy, and he's got a really nice shop. I wish I had it, and he has all these saws and so forth, but he's kind of an older guy and he doesn't use it as much, and we need to make sure that we're very purposeful and communicative of making sure that he understands where we're going to be going with the rate increases for larger facilities, and maybe give him a chance to kind of rethink the way his shop works today, because he doesn't really use some of the saws and so forth. So we came up with the pros and cons, and we just want to make sure that we don't rate shock anybody in particular, but I'll let you guys read the difference between the larger service size. I think there's a lot of merit to it. I think we just need to do some more homework.
I did a little arithmetic with those numbers. If we had done this, if we had put in the 400 amp and greater than 400, it would bring in about $250,000 if we added that. And the impact then for the rest for everyone is would go down about $16.50 a year.
Yeah. Yeah, those don't sound out of line.
Small, yeah, because there's so few people, but for those people, of course, it will require them to pay more if we put that in our program at some time in the future.
Right.
So
Also,
I
if I
want
could-
to say that I feel like we've been hearing from members, including today, that they feel that the costs should be higher for these larger services. We also heard that from Friends of the San Juans. So, I know that there are a few cases involving things like these the shop for one person, but overall, it really doesn't seem fair to me for lower income people to be subsidizing these larger services for the very large homes that are being built out here.
Yeah, I don't think any of us disagree with that at all, Wendy. The question is more timing. When do we want to make sure that we include that in the service study that we're going to do in 2025, or do it now, which is available. But I think the communication side of it is what we're going to be studying. We may confuse some people too.
Foster?
Yeah.
Since I was one of the people in the last meeting that sort of pushed for us to, try to get to some of our new rate components, in the coming year or faster, or however you want to talk about it. I want to make sure that our schedule, I agree with what you're saying here. We need the time for communication. What we need to make sure is that the cost of service study doesn't wind up just before budget time in 2025, such that we're having this same timing problem again in 2025. If we need the time for communication with the members about a possible change to the rate design, then we need to kind of wind up all of that rate design stuff earlier in the year, maybe even only by a month. But I don't want to be sitting here next year having the same conversation about there isn't time to do communication.
Yeah, I think I like that, Mark. I think that the thought that we're having is, as we go through this cost of service study, when something becomes important that we want to implement, we need to make sure that we communicate that right then and there with the membership, so we don't get, like you said, we don't get caught flat-footed and then at the end of the year have to do the same thing again. I would look at this and say it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to be adjusting for service size. Those details could be nuanced a little bit if we choose to do them during the 2025 process. But I like your.
I think the adjusting for service size is a pure matter of communication with the members, right? The demand component, as you talked about, there are some technical challenges. It's not just the things that you talked about. We need to give members a way to view their own demand and to understand it, right? Which means that inside their billing information and on the website, they need to be able to see the demand, not just their usage.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one thing we need to do is set a timeline. So I would think if we're going to do any significant change, I think by September, we should be talking to our members, probably through the months, but over the summer or something like that. But by September, I think that'd be as late as we want to do a major change.
I like that. Would it still be understood that we probably wouldn't invoke that change until January 1st?
Yes, of course.
But we could make those adjustments in our structure, if you will.
Right.
Good.
We could start educating people even earlier in the year about what demand looks like, right? We wouldn't implement anything, or we wouldn't even make a final decision on a 2026 tariff until the end of the year, like normal, right? But some of those, if we're talking about communication being the major thing that we need to do in order to bring people along on a rate design, then we can educate people anytime about the core definitions about these concepts, right?
Yeah, I really like that a lot. If we did implement a demand, for instance, we would know that well in advance, make sure that we communicated to the membership. I can guarantee the board would want to phase something that like that in. And that phase will be, phasing in will be an amount that people could grasp pretty easily. So
right, exactly.
yeah, good.
I'm going to make an assumption that this cost of service analysis is a good one. I'll give you an example. Simply having a larger transformer may have a direct cost with respect to the losses in that thing. It's just while it's in there doing nothing. There's some obvious things you can point to, but I think it needs to enumerate what's going on. For example, if all those peaks occur, in that cold February night and everything, and it blasts us up into that $1,000 a megawatt hour sort of thing, that's one thing. But somebody's got a large panel and has a 8 kilowatt hour peak in July, that may not actually impose any costs on the system as a whole. So I think it's really important to understand, what drives the actual cost that we have to bear in the system in order to support a certain level of activity.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Vincent. I think the more time we give ourselves to understand that, the better. So I support what Mark said. Let's get on with this early in the year.
Yep.
First quarter is where this real study should be doing its main part of the work, and give us time to really think about it and come out with good communications thereafter. One small item, Foster, there's a typo in the title line on this chart. I don't think we're talking about lager beer.
Oh,
you may after you make your decision, but yeah, you're
lager service.
Sorry for that.
That's all right. We're here to point it out.
Appreciate it. I know that, by the way, I know this is going to be a hard process.
Mm.
And I anticipate the board's going to have some thick skin, and we're going to have to make some really hard decisions and really do a lot of good analysis so we could really defend our decision making, because the industry in total is really struggling with this. And we're no exception, and there's no easy answer. There's no silver bullet. We're just going to have to make adjustments that make sense for our co-ops so we can make sure we're a viable organization financially. So thanks for your input. Appreciate it. Do we answer everything in the text? There's a lot of stuff going on there, and I didn't have my text on. I don't know if the iMessages or the chat, if there's anything outside. Krista, you might want to roll through that and see if there's any questions that we could adjust.
Yeah, there is some conversations about heat pumps and demands. So I think they're more just talking about the mechanisms. I don't think there's anything left unanswered.
Great, thanks for looking at that. Let's keep going. Demand charge, again, just technical issues right now. I don't think they're long-term. Our goal is to start our rollout of our, it's in our 2025 budget going forward, our 3 to 4 year rollout of our new metering infrastructure. And then that'll allow us to do those demand cycles. They'll allow us to do time of use and time of generation, really understanding peak periods and so forth. So we're excited about this component. How it translates to a tariff is yet to be determined, but will be front and center in our 2025 rate analysis. Go on to the next one.
Foster, just on that point, I mentioned before, is there a fundamental barrier technically to getting demand peak into Smart Hub, or is that just a byproduct of what you need to do with meter and billing vendors?
It's really a byproduct of just trying to get in sync technically. So I don't think there's anything that's prohibiting us to do it. The way that our metering infrastructure works between our billing component and our meters needs to be a little adjusted, if you will.
Okay.
The way the metering infrastructure was set up, back in 2017, didn't allow this to be so dynamic and automated as that we need to. But we can adjust that because they've evolved since we've installed the meters. So we got a Band-Aid that we can put on there pretty quick.
All right.
We know that we wanted to put a placeholder of, if you want to put $1 demand out there, what would you be looking in terms of collecting it? And you can kind of see the numbers that are there. So getting back to where we are, again, I like the idea of going through all of these things in a lot of detail. I just felt, with the team, we were just like, gosh, I wish we just had a little bit more information on certain variables to make sure that we don't have any really big rate shock. And I don't want to frustrate people. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on with Baylor Hill, and people have a tendency to kind of say, oh, is our rates going up because of different things that are not appropriate and not really at play. And I think that confusion will be amplified if we're not very systematic and careful the way that we move forward. And so we're still going to be, as staff, recommending that we just do a 6% rate increase to all the tariff metrics equally, as opposed to the split. But suffice it to say, if the board wants to go through a higher fixed charge versus variable, the 75/25, the number 2, we can do it. And we could also add in the service charge if all those things are appropriate. We just personally want to spend a little bit more time communicating so we don't end up with unintended consequences and mixing some frustrations out there with other components that we're not working on yet. We went through, want to make sure that the board looked at all the different options so you understood the service charges, or the service access fee. You can kind of see amongst the options. And then the block rates with the kilowatt hours. So you can kind of see where those things are. I think this is good information. And if you guys really wanted to go down the road of the 75/25, it's not a bad option. It really is not. It's not a dramatic difference between option 1 and option 2 when you consider the facility charge. $60 versus, just under 63. So that one doesn't sound out of line to me. Throwing in service size, same kind of thing. I think that, we hear you loud and clear. I think Wendy's been very good about understanding this. Same thing with Brian about, the need to make sure that we adjust those. And I don't think any of us in the room are against it. It's just a timing thing. See the difference. We just want to get some more variable components out there. If you want to look at the percentage increases, remember, we're telling the membership that we need a 6% rate increase, but it's a little difference depending on how you view the fixed versus variable. And then if you wanted to look at the raw numbers, you can kind of see those two. Tom, you popped up on a chat, but I didn't have a chance to look through it. Do you want any thoughts?
Yeah, this is just a side question. I was curious in the coming new updated metering infrastructure and software, everything that goes with that, if there's any new features for member generators to analyze statistically the power contribution back to the grid and timing throughout the year, or on an hourly basis or daily basis. I'm just not that familiar with how granular the data is now on member generators, but with Switch It Up, we're certainly funding and incentivizing more and more member generation. And I'm just curious what would be coming with new features in metering that would provide more data on that front.
Yeah, I think stay tuned. I know there's way more technology advancements, as you know, in the metering infrastructure. I'd love to know what it is. We've gone down 2 different roads. Originally, we had like a production meter that we used to install, and I love that. Getting a hold of that data really helps us manage our grid or anticipate. Would we benefit from that going forward? You bet. Is that something that we would want to invest in, on our own for a solar array? Those are going to be those considerations that we'll look at the trade-offs next year. I think it's great stuff, though. I mean, think about how complex this. I hope everyone really does. It's like if you had a bunch of solar out there, or go extreme, go to solar on everyone's rooftop. Think about all the different inverters. All of your system use is going to be used internally, so that doesn't even touch the grid. That's still at the retail rate. It's only the kilowatt hours that hit the grid and the timing of that. I mean, you look at this, the complexities may require us to go there, Tom. I look at it as, if you did a time of use, time of generation, look at a little mini stock trading organization where you got, thousands of trades going on every second. So, and it's doable. But we, obviously we need to be in front of that and really understand.
It's also coming with residential energy storage. The cost is dropping dramatically, and more of these residential systems include storage. So that further complicates things in terms of when do you use your stored energy and not load the grid? When would you be incentivized to push power back onto the grid with your inverter from your stored energy that you accumulated from solar in days prior? So that adds even more kind of variables in terms of behavior. And some folks are investing in really deep storage almost as a financial arbitrage situation where you can push it back at times where the tariffs would support the best financial return if you're just selling power back to the grid.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, from the grid's perspective, we'd love that, or from Alpaca's. If we, if we had a member that had battery power, I'd welcome, buying that and then moving that power to someone who needs it.
Where that makes the most sense is if you're on a time of use, time of generation thing. When you throw the storage in there, you need some intelligence in your controller system to do it, but you can actually save yourself a bunch of money with that.
Yeah, and that's a win. I mean, that gets to the point where we're not overloading our cables that go to the mainland. I mean, it really helps dramatically on how we operate. So, but a lot of complexity. I don't want to discount that. Those are great discussions that we're going to have throughout the year. Can't wait.
So just real quick, the demand portion of it isn't a factor of new metering or anything like that. It's really about quality control of the data coming through. So when we pushed a harder quality control to make sure we're going to a billing component from a informative component, things have to change. So that's what's going on here. The new meters we're getting, it's a one size fits all from time of use, and then we have to worry about our throughputs, getting data back from the meter to it. So those are the complex things. We do have a vast communication network, but it's got to be vast, incredibly reliable, and when you get into billing components, it's got to be unbelievable amount of quality control going into it. So there's a lot of considerations. It'd be great to understand if there's data sets that are useful. Right now we get down to the hourly component for most meters. There's a couple meters that do down to the 15-minute down into Smart Hub. And that is going to the grid and from the grid to the home. Those are the predominant components, since we live in a world of kW instead of something like kVA, or worrying about specific voltage, amperage, power factor, all the crazy components. But mind you, we're managing 15,000 meters, and we are a small player in the realm of technology. So we're at the whim of the greater industry. And when you have some, PSEs and Avistas and, Duke Powers and the massive systems, they develop to those folks because they have more money to put into those developments. So managing data sets in the hundreds of thousands of meters is much different. And so I think we're going to end up staying very similar to where we are and getting more only granular in time, not in further quality of power components down to the residential meters.
I think everyone knows this, but our meters are tested many times to make sure that they're accurate. It follows the meets and measures requirements of a gas station, for instance. That we have to all rely on the fact that those are accurate. And when somebody challenges a meter read or wants more information, then we need to be able to support it and never lose that integrity. And that's what Russell's making sure that we can gather that and keep that level of integrity when we get into other metering infrastructure stuff.
One thing I want to bring up too is, we talk an awful lot about the technologies involved in making it do this thing. I've been studying this thing for a couple of years now and collected lots of research and experiential information on it. And the thing we're not paying much attention to is the sociological component of this thing. And are you going to make these things voluntary? Are they going to be opt-in or opt-out? In other words, if we apply this, everybody's got to do this stuff. And are you going to look at what behaviors is somebody going to have to do and what skill level is going to be required for them to affect the bill that they're going to get on this thing? So as we go through it, I think we got to understand that as much as possible, because the experience throughout the industry has not been real sterling. We haven't had people flocking to this stuff saying greatest thing since sliced bread. Most of the stuff I've seen, it's resistance, or if they opted in, they got out of it as quick as they could. So like I say, it's a communication problem. We need to be able to explain why we're doing it and what the benefits are going to be.
What's that, Vince?
Mhm.
Let's go to the next. There is. So I think that's what we got on our presentation stuff. I mean, you can kind of see the heavy user, light user on an average basis. That's where your 6% comes in. That's our even split. If you get it, the consumer type, average user, heavy user, light user, and all electric and seasonal.
So are you proposing a specific one for us?
Yeah, I guess there's, how many more slides we got on this thing?
We
just,
let's go back to this. That's the meat of it.
yeah, that's the good one.
Yeah,
So we're staff's proposing to move forward with the same rate increase of 6% distributed amongst option 1 components evenly, and not go forward with options 2 through 8. If the board wants to entertain any of those, again, we can do it. That's just not what's recommended.
Okay, I would invite the board to ask additional questions or make a motion, or what your will is.
Okay, can I ask an additional question on that slide that you just flipped through really quickly? Because I had the question when I was doing the pre-read, which is why on the heavy users is the variable charge in cents per kilowatt hour higher at the higher usages? It was the slide that you just had up 1 second ago.
Yeah, let's pull that back up then. We had what we did is we inserted some rate thresholds. I'll see if I can do a little lead in while it's showing up. When we had there was a grow op component many years ago where it was against I think the federal guidelines for Bonneville Power Administration that growing pot was against the federal government. From a state level, it wasn't. And from a load growth perspective, it got our attention. So we actually put in those thresholds really for an interesting purpose. It was like the heavy grow op kind of thing. What was your one in particular, your question?
Right, because what I was looking at is under option 7. No, let's see. Yeah. So can you just go to the slide you just had up this a second ago? I wish
The
I
one
could.
that's got the kilowatt hour tariffs on.
Yeah, this one right here. Okay, I was looking at how the heavy user on option 7, their rate is going up by 9.57% versus you know, the 5.26 for the average user or 5.26 for the light user.
You'll see the note down here. Once you induce this service size charge, the assumption is a heavy user is likely on a higher service. We're looking at the greatest impact of those heavy. So once you induce a $28.8 charge monthly, this is the impact over the year.
So you'd be the same as option 2, except for you add in the service charge of $28.80. Excuse me, option 1. Sorry.
It's option 1. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Okay. Yeah. But then on the slide before that had all the extra numbers, I think I saw one where it looked like the cents per kilowatt hour was different for, I'll find it later and talk to you later about it. I just want to understand this as we go through for more planning. But even on that simple slide, I just have to say, and I understand not wanting to have a lot of education and are being right at the end of the cycle for rate increases. But to me, the option 7 of shifting the payment, because this is pretty straightforward, of the larger users onto the larger users, so they're paying their fair share. To me, that's not so complicated to explain to our members as getting into all the more complex demand charges and 75/25 and everything. So I just want to revisit that just for a minute, in the essence of that it really does bother me a lot right now
I think that's, well, thanks for speaking up, Wendy. Maybe there's a need for a little poll or something that we can try to figure out how to navigate our tariff increase. So Wendy, you want to have more dialogue and find out whether or not there's interest in invoking option 7.
$14 a month. So it's not like we're talking about like a major increase. That difference is basically what everybody else, I understand, is subsidizing the larger users. It just seems like we're kind of doing the right thing by moving in this direction.
May,
We go to that one chart, Russell. Can you get back to that? The facility charge versus the KWH for the
So
larger facility.
may I also remind you that just because you're a smaller service does not always make you a low income. Those could be gates. Those could be wildly idle services.
Right, and we have,
And so those tend to be subsidized greatly through that fixed versus variable component as well. So we do have to pick our battles. That's just a reminder. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong.
Oh, no. I like the 75-25, but given that that's harder to explain to the membership and where we are time-wise, the option 7 seems easier to explain to the members, and it's less significant, but it's also moving in the right direction.
I think we need to be careful here. If we're going to make moves like this, I think we need to do it carefully and mindfully.
Yep.
So I think that, we've had examples in the past. This is not about service size, but as we know, we've got a lot of heavier users who may be on the lower end of the income scale, right? So we can't look at everybody who's using a lot of power and assume that we know what their circumstances are, right? We know that there are a lot of people who may be in older homes that are poorly insulated, and they may be on fixed incomes, for example. And that's why you quite properly, I think, Foster, are cautioning us to move deliberately, right? I think we, the board, have obviously you can see that we, the board, have an appetite for moving towards a new rate design, right? And we've got members in the audience who are aligned with that too. I think everybody's going to be aligned to moving towards a new rate design, but we do have to do our homework.
The figures to come up with this, by the way, are based on proportions from our prior cost of service, which has kicked off with the study from the board is out of date, I would say, needs study. We need a new view.
Sure.
So that is just another caution, as Foster pointed out well earlier in this presentation.
And I would add to that is we just don't know that pool well enough to find out if there's any rate shock outliers that are unjustified. And I'm just a little cautious on doing that to anybody. I think our reputation is wonderful when it comes to rates, and we need to keep it that way, and communicating and really understanding it. There's a lot of merit to that.
I've got a couple things to say here. One is naming is not helpful. This is a measurement, okay? And the question is, do the 400s or the above actually are heavy users? I think we probably need to look at the data of those 955 people and see what that looks like. That's number one. Number two is, remember, we've had discussions over the years. People's income is not a relationship to what they use, okay? And we have to separate those two. And if there are people who are low income and have very high costs for keeping their house warm, we need to find ways to deal with that. And some of that we already have in our program here. But the other is we may need to do something for people who cannot afford to switch from resistance to heat pumps. Maybe we need to do something more. So I think those are two things that we need to look at. And that's why I agree. I would love to see this. And I was the one who put this on the table, but I don't think we're quite ready yet because we haven't compared what their meter number is versus to what they're actually using.
There was one other thought that I just had when you mentioned that, Brian, is there's a handful of locations that are a prior engineering study we used to do is we used to look at loads, and if there's a way that we could cut our line loss target. If somebody had a large facility, we could still put a lower meter out there that would cut our line loss. And so there was a handful of instances where we put meters that were 200 amp services kind of thing in place of it. So we knew that they weren't using as much as they had planned for in actuality. So those are those things that we could do a lot more research in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll just chime in a couple of things too. One, so I'd like to see, I would like to see evidence that would support the fact that one class of users is actually subsidizing another class of users. I mean, I've never actually seen anything like that could point to and say, here's what's happening. The second thing to consider is that while we're studying this, our legislature is going to be working on this whole low income program thing. And that may throw a curveball into what we think about, because they're, as we've talked about before, their desire is that everybody below 80% of the area median income pays no more than 6% of their income for total energy cost. And as the law stands right now, if they stick with that, we're going to be paying for wood and propane and everything else involved with it. So we got to keep an eye on what happens there. It may not come to pass, and it may, but if it does, we got a $3 million problem to deal with.
Yeah, just add a little color on that one. What we always try to do is we try to separate our low income programs from our rates. There was, I've heard of other utilities where they put some low end components, embedded in their rates, and they try to put it within the rate structure. And that's an approach that's not transparent. You really can't, you can't explain it to the members. So just suffice it to say, we want to really separate out any of those programs from our rate structure and support our low income people with our program and make sure we do a good job there as opposed to muddying the rate structure a little bit. So thanks, Vince.
I'd like to add an additional perspective on all of this. We need to be careful that we've got blinders on here, that we're only thinking in terms of the cost of electricity to our customers. In reality, our customers are making decisions based on cost of energy, and they're making decisions as to whether they'll invest in an electric car and therefore convert the gasoline costs into electric costs. And not just one isolated, maybe the biggest example, but lots of little decisions that are made here by customers. And we shouldn't ignore that, because in reality, we represent the best deal out there for the average consumer. Electricity prices for both heating and for transportation are very competitive and considerably less than the alternatives. So whilst we might be making decisions based on whether someone's what their financial resources really are, it's much more complex than that. And if you look at the oil executives, if you like, are they having these kind of decisions when they're pricing gasoline at the pump? Absolutely not. They're looking at the fungible cost of their product on a worldwide market and setting their prices based on that. We can't do that, but at the same time, we need to realize that there's more to this whole thing than just cost of electricity and the cost of electricity to our customers from BPA. So, it doesn't answer how we should go about this, but bear in mind that there are other economic forces in play out here that are affecting our customers, and we don't want to make this thing so complex from the point of view of electricity that no one can really understand it and make the right decisions.
You raised up the great problem. It's, do we want to incentivize electrification of heating and transportation, which you would want to keep your kilowatt hours low, versus solar? If you want to get incentivized solar, you want to keep your kWh a little higher to give them better incentives. So those are those trade-offs that we need to grapple with next year for sure.
Yeah, and we need to be making those decisions which are beneficial to our customers,
right?
In overall terms, and I think encouraging use of electricity is a good thing, because that will keep the overall or the average cost of electricity down for the majority of our customers.
Thanks, Jerry. Shoots, you want to chime in, or Tom?
And nothing to add from me.
Thanks, Tom.
I don't have any,
Okay,
Thanks.
so what is the will?
All right, let me try to tee it up. You go for there. Staff recommends the board make a motion to support our revenue increase to apply to all tariff mechanisms on an equal basis, with the exception of our credit for solar. And then we have the all the individual rate tables, and yellow is what's proposed to be changed to.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I will move that we accept, is it option 2, Foster?
Option 1.
Option 1, applying the 6% rate increase to evenly to all of the rate classes.
Is there a second?
A second.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, number 1 is accepted.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I've heard loud and clear that one of the first things we can do, maybe there's some easier things that we can invoke sooner rather than later as we go through our cost of service study. And I'm thinking of a lot of the input Wendy said. So maybe we can pull some triggers a little bit sooner on those components too.
Foster, you may want to pass around. I shared some stuff with you and Jay yesterday. I did a kind of a study of all available publicly announced rate increases in the Pacific Northwest that I could get my hands on. And it may not make people feel any better. We're probably in the bottom third of the increases. We're seeing some eye-watering things out there. BPA is raising its rates to 10.8% starting October 1st. So that's getting factored in. And Puget Sound Energy is looking at 12 or 14%. I mean, just kind of march down the line. Other co-ops and PUDs they're struggling with the same issues we are too. So it's a universal phenomenon.
Yeah, I won't bring them up now because I think everyone gets it. But yeah, I think we're a lot of utilities are really in that struggle mode with cost of service, metrics going up through the roof and inflation factors and so forth, and the tariffs. I'm seeing we went around, all the utilities at PNGC, and you're right. It was shocking to see some of the rate increases that were going on. So I guess we have company. We'll say it that way.
Yeah. And that's just the Northwest region. If you look at other parts of the country, it's even more accelerated. It's shocking.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, where are we on agenda here now?
Can I say something quick before we go on?
Sure, Brian.
This is an incredible work done by staff. This is absolutely wonderful. And to be honest, it's so much better than the consultants that we used in the past for cost of service. So it's really helpful. And I think when we pull in consultants for 2025, we can give them information because they probably are not aware of how our business works compared to most other utilities, where our costs are and so forth. So I think we were in great shape, and I want to really thank the staff for what they've done.
Really appreciate that, Brian. I absolutely believe that same thing. We have to address so many different things before others because our numbers are so impactful for our members. And running this 20 island grid is more challenging than not. So thanks for that.
I continue to think that my major worry is finding an organization good enough to do a good job on this cost of service study, as we talked about in a previous board meeting.
Yeah,
we're going to have our cost of service. We want to talk about some of the contract responses we got back from our cost of service vendors. So we'll have that in executive session. We'll come back out. So I agree with you 100%.
Great.
It's going to be an interesting discussion that we're going to have because I think using industry standard processes is what we've tried and they failed. I think we need to be better than that. So I agree with you, Mark.
All right. Let me
Why don't we go to the agenda, just so I could
Yeah.
check that out real quick.
You were right here. I think we got everything except the general manager reports.
Oh, but by the way, the Home Street Bank, Nancy sent me something, Jerry. She said it was we've had it around for a little bit longer. It's a Home Street investment CD that we've had for signers. And the orders of magnitude was just, I think it was a little over 100,000, but it was more of an investment than it was a 401k thing, just to clarify.
Thank you.
So let me recommend we go through the general manager reports, and then Jerry, will you then give us a WRECA nuggets of wisdom after
Sure.
that? And then we'll break, and then we'll go into executive session when we come back.
Okay, perfect. We can speed through the
Okay, go for it.
Section pretty quick. Let's see here. I had to take a deep breath because one of the first things out of the box is looking through our WIP, and we've been doing really well there. Safety, we had really I'm not going to minimize it, but a back strain that was pretty significant, but something that wasn't really an accident as a contact or anything. So our safety that is really paramount for everyone. We need to make sure everybody comes back to their families and the line crew especially. So that number dropped, and it really makes us sad. We understand that those things happen, but the orders of magnitude that we got is this particular person is finding fantastic spirits. They'll be back to work in short order. And it was more of, in my mind, my back goes out periodically, and I consider it more to age than not. But every time I work now, it seems like I get more of those. But it wasn't something like an electrical contact or anything that from a worker safety perspective that we need to be cautious of.
Was this incurred on work time, Foster?
It did, and it had to do with lifting, and we need to make sure that we understand. We go back, or he's back to work. Actually, Nancy just sent me something that he's back to work in good spirits and so forth. But it was a back incident where she was lifting something. I think as we go through back, lifting training and everything about how to use your legs and so forth, that sometimes these things just happen. Grants, another sigh, with I'm starting to hear a lot from DOE. We're going through some stuff with the title investigation and future stuff. There's a lot of unknowns going on in ED with Department of Energy with what's going to go on with future grants. A lot of nervousness within DOE. The Water and Power Group is no exception. And there's a lot of unknowns. So we're a little bit, on pins and needles there. We're still very confident with working through the Department of Commerce. Department of Commerce has been a really good ally for us. We have a request in for them to do more and more, investigation things. And I think there's a really good relationship with them. So as long as they have grant dollars available, we always remain positive on Department of Commerce through Washington State. Some of the, all the grant awards that we've been awarded are still solid. And we're moving forward with, everything on the list. And the $15 million one that was close to that for the broadband side is always positive. And we've been doing great inroads there with a partnership between Opalco and Rock Island. I think we've done a really good efforts, and everybody should be proud of all the grant work we did. I'm a little cautious with anticipating grants like I did last year. This time I was so excited with the grants. And I'm a little more apprehensive going into this next cycle. Let's keep going. Finance, we're having a great year. 2024, we talked about this during our budget last month. And there's nothing alarming on the horizon. I think we're doing really well. If we could replicate 2024 financially every year, boy, that'd be something we would do. You see the numbers for our revenue numbers are up. Our expenses are a little bit down. Our operating margins are really good. I think we're firing on all cylinders. And coming out of the pandemic and everything else, our culture's back. We just had an employee appreciation event, and the smiles and the, people around the room. And one particular lineman brought his baby, and it's always nice to see the next generation up. It's, you be proud of this organization because it's here to stay, and the next generation's here, and can't wait to get to work and improve everything we can on a grid level and the communication side too. So Love that budget tracking. ECA is working well. Our heating degree days is, consistent with where we want to be. We don't necessarily want to be, high or low. We want to be in the middle of the road, and we've been doing a good job with that. Let's keep going. So that one looks good. On the horizon, we think the beginning of the year is going to be a cooler side, which is good for us. And we'll see where, those flips that go into from colder to warmer are very impactful for us, certainly in the winter time when they hit. The summertime, we can expect those, and that's okay. It's really that when you start to see those red lines in the summer and the winter months is where it gets to be a challenge. I'm referencing that graph that's on the right. It looks good right now. In the future, those things flip really quick, by the way. Our energy assistance programs are wonderful. Just can't say enough about what we've been able to do for COVID, for PAL, and we're one of the few co-ops that are out there that collect additional revenue to take care of our low-income members. So I'm always really proud of that. For our EAP and our PAL, we work together with LIHEAP and a new one, S-LIHEAP. And our Switch It Up programs are just top notch. This is probably one of the best things that we've been able to do for our membership is to provide the capital with low interest financing for them to embrace energy efficiency devices in their homes. You see some staggering numbers since we opened it up to new things in 2022. We used to be really proud of the ductless heat pump. We've been doing it for 6 years. $7.5 million is a lot of investment that our members are going to benefit from. That's tremendous. And then you look at, we've already been caught up and surpassed in solar, right? Solar, we've only been opening that up for 3 years. And if you put those two numbers together for solar and solar battery, wow, those are big numbers, 7.6 million. So really excited about that. Going forward with our rest, how much, every once in a while people are going to be asking how much do we have left because it's a finite resource. So a little table here, just know that it exists. We originally have the ability, it's kind of like a line of credit. What we do is we draw down rest in 3 different tranche codes. We've drawn down the first, rest 1.0. We're in the process of drawing down 2.0. And then 3.0 we got is the kind of the balanced tranche, but we got 27 million still left to go of the 46 that we originally got, which is wonderful. And I think people are going to be embracing it more and more as inflation and interest rates are as high as they currently are. So wonderful program. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. Pretty neat. Let's see here. Some of the other energy rebates that we get through, kind of standard rebates that we go through efficiency wise. With a little bit of switch it. Mostly Bonneville Power Administration has some rebates, incentives that we benefit from. Interconnects up to 829 solar connections. Pretty impressive. And if anything, it's really interesting is there was when we were originally debating our solar rate, we've seen actually the number of solar installations go up, I'll say exponentially, but go up dramatically. From when we even invoked that rate, there was some predictions that it was going to slow everything down. I think the opposite has actually occurred. We've done a lot of community solar and rooftop solar through the Switch It Up Interconnects program. So pretty darn neat. Solar benefits, you can see that paying off to the members. One thing that's not on this list that we were contemplate tracking, Wendy had a good idea of tracking some of the other, we call them solar partnerships. There's the Orcas centers putting solar on the roof. Some of the ports are looking at that as well. And I think making sure that we really kind of start tracking all of the solar that's put on roofs. I think there's a lot of interest to adopting as much solar as we can. And we're obviously in support of that. And tracking that has been something that we really haven't done yet. So we're going to give some thought to that. Upcoming events. Our town hall, you can kind of see it. We're excited about it. Those are fun processes that we have now. I think that using our Zoom connections has been really fruitful. We get a lot of members engaged. We have our town hall for title. You kind of see the dates there that we're going to be doing. Other workshops going to be looking at our energy future annual meeting and our annual benefit member meeting. So that's going to be fun. And we got our election, go back up, the hot seats. So, Mark, you good? You looked over, there was marks on there from Brian and Jerry. So anyway, know that that's the schedule. Thanks for volunteering your time. You guys are wonderful. We kicked off the election and governance committee, as Ray alluded to, and they do a great job of really making sure we mine the right membership to potentially run for the board. But we've got good board members right now in the seat, so all good there. Why don't I touch on Baylor Hill? That was a topic of discussion before. We got kind of latest update for the Baylor Hill. We have a new information request coming out of the county, so we were anticipating having a public hearing for our conditional use permit on December 18th. That has been, it's not, let's see, we need to provide additional information requested by the county before we can have our public hearing. So that's been delayed until further notice. The information that we're requesting, we've been doing this for a long time. It's getting to the point where we think we provide all the information that was there on we did our pre-application process with the county and say, hey, if you do all the following things, you'll be good to go. It seems to me there's more and more things being added onto the list. And the latest one was another big deep breath. So we got to provide additional information about what's going to go on with that. So suffice it to say, no hearing date on the 18th. We're going to continue to work with the county and kind of navigate through that stuff. We'll let the board know when we know more information about Baylor Hill and some of the discussions that are ensuing. So anyway, you're off the hook to come to the meeting on the 18th, at least for now, and we'll reschedule that if and when it takes the next step. Any questions on Baylor Hill?
We're going to have further discussion on this in the executive session.
Yeah, we could probably do that if you want to ask some additional questions that we can.
Yeah,
I
think it's probably more appropriate in executive session.
Okay, we can do that. Everything's going really well with Rock Island. The last time we had, you looked at these numbers, they're all catching up with year-end figures as budgeted. Can't say enough about what we've been able to get out with our additional grant funds. We're probably going to be, I'm hopeful that we could do 3 years worth of work in 2. So pretty excited about that grant opportunity we got a hold of. And I can't say enough about our Rock Island crew. They're stellar, as well as our Opalco group. And with that, why don't we break and do the executive session?
No, we're gonna let's take a 15-minute break at this point.
Okay.
It's 10:40, so let's get back at 5 minutes.
Now, when we get back, are we executive?
They're there. Okay. So we have discussions in executive session, and we have received an application for a new EGC committee member for an open position in District 2. Person's in good standing with the cooperative and a resident of Orcas Island, and we've wholeheartedly approved that. So I'll be looking for a motion to approve the individual. Do we have to go by name?
We're good now. We can mention Deborah Exton.
So we're looking for an approval for Ms. Exton to be added to the EGC.
So moved.
Okay. I second.
Okay, Brian has moved. Mark has moved. And Wendy has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Hear none. Excellent.
And then the second topic, Vince, if we could reconfirm the balance of the current EGC members for 3-year terms.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the current members of the EGC for an additional or new 3-year term.
So moved.
Tom
Second.
got it and Brian got it, or just the opposite, one of the two. I'm not sure which. I think it was Tom and Brian, first, second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? I hear none. All right. I think it's got it.
Thank you for that.
Check your chat here. I think, let's see if I can put that in there. Enter to send. No, I guess not. I'll have to email it to you. I've got my little poem here for Bob. I think you'll get a kick out of it when you get something. end of 2024. Well done for another year. Challenging as usual. Another one coming up on that thing. So I think we want to thank the brave and hardworking people of Opelka, Foster and staff, and everybody in there for amazing performance for the year. I don't know if it's Nancy, she's still with us. Do we get to see you one more time, or is this adios for us?
I think it's adios, but can I wear my pajamas? Because the next time I will retire on the 15th of January and the meeting's on the 16th. So my staff was like, well, you're going to come to the meeting, aren't you? And I said, only if I can wear my pajamas.
Nancy, our thanks to you for the years of service. I mean, unbelievable work you've done in keeping the ship afloat and everything like that. And I know.
No, it's been fun.
It's
a great group, great organization. I'm very proud to have been part of it for part of the time, for a small amount of time.
So now when you get your First Amendment rights back, and now you can comment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to do a shout out to Joey Wyckoff, because they're actually taking my job and splitting it in two. And Travis is going to head up the finance, which totally makes sense. And Joey's going to head up member services.
All right.
So, yeah. So we got two newbies.
Well, we've got a high barrier, high hurdle to keep up with the great work you've done. We'll expect heroic efforts out of them.
Well, I would absolutely just mimic that. I think the world of you, Nancy. Thanks for being part of our group. You've done wonderful work over the years. She was my first hire, as a matter of fact. I found her. I think it came from a hairdresser somehow.
Yep. The girl that cut my hair told me that there's a local job for you. And I said, what? So I went and interviewed, and I worked for Ernst & Young at the time. And I told my partner that I reported to that I took a job that's local. And he goes, well, can I give you more money? And I was like, no, it's actually a pay cut. And then he was like, and I go, and my boss has a ponytail. And he looked at me. He couldn't believe that. He was very conservative, so I thought it was hilarious.
I lost the ponytail, but thanks for.
Yeah, you lost the ponytail. That was funny.
Thanks for your years of service, Nancy. You will be missed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy.
And for the board, I want to do a shout out to the board around the holidays and what a great year it's been. And you're making a really challenging thing exciting every day, and it means so much to have the board support in everything we do, all the way down through staff. And we feel that, and we know that, and we're all part of that same team. And thanks for your support, because these challenging topics to navigate through without your support it's a challenge, but with it, it's a privilege. So thanks for being on our board.
All right. So with that, best of luck to everybody. I hope the holidays you can wind down just a little bit and pick it up next year and do better work. So with that, we'll close it off.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Happy and healthy for all.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.